Greenhouses are used to protect plants from the weather. They also help keep out insect and disease pests. There are 4 basic types of large greenhouses used to grow plants: ridge and furrow, freestanding, Quonset, and gabled. Greenhouses can be covered with a variety of materials, including glass, fiberglass, polyethylene, and polycarbonate. These covering materials normally provide the right amount of light for good plant growth, as well as insulation and durability. You may have heard the words greenhouse effect. The greenhouse effect occurs when heat from the sun is trapped in a closed greenhouse. That's why even on days when it's cold outside, a greenhouse may get hot inside. Allowing this hot air to escape to the outside, also called venting or exhausting, helps to keep the temperature in the greenhouse from becoming too warm. Most greenhouses are usually equipped with some form of heating and cooling system. Some type of heater is often required to protect greenhouse-grown plants from cold weather. Gas-fired heaters are most commonly used to heat greenhouses. The most common form of cooling is the use of cooling pads. A cooling pad is a large, rectangularly shaped section of paper material that's placed along one wall of the greenhouse. Water is allowed to drop over and through the paper. Air cools as the water evaporates from the pad. This air is then pulled across the greenhouse and out the exhaust fan. Shading is often used to reduce light levels and heat load. All of these systems work together as we try to create the ideal environment for plant growth. Greenhouse sanitation means keeping the greenhouse, tools, materials, and even the area around the greenhouse clean and well taken care of. Clean growing conditions greatly reduce loss of plants from insects and diseases. Here are some helpful suggestions for keeping our greenhouse clean. Always keep hose ends, breakers, and nozzles off the ground. Contamination from soil can spread diseases from plant to plant. Controlling weeds in and around the greenhouse will help eliminate hiding places for harmful insects. Close or repair any area of the greenhouse where insects and diseases may enter. Insect screening is also helpful in preventing harmful pests from entering the greenhouse. Avoid using growing media that's come in contact with the ground. Plant diseases from soil can contaminate the media and cause severe problems. Before a new crop arrives, it's very important to clean the growing area by removing all the old plants, crop debris, and weeds. Benches, tools, and irrigation systems need to be disinfected regularly. Disinfecting kills germs that cause diseases in plants. Disinfecting may be done by cleaning with a mixture of bleach and water. Only clean equipment, pest-free, and disease-free plants should be brought into the greenhouse. Inspect growing areas regularly to quickly get rid of potential problems. Prevention is often the least expensive, most effective, and only pest and disease control option available. Always clean your tools as you move from one crop to another. Most greenhouse-grown crops are started from cuttings, plugs, or seed. Cuttings are taken from an established stock plant and then rooted. Plugs are young seedling plants that are transplanted into larger containers. Plants may also be started by planting seed in flats or pots. Growing new plants from cuttings, plugs, or seed is called plant propagation. One very common way to propagate plants is by tip cutting. To take a tip cutting, select a section of stem with a healthy section of leaves at the tip. Carefully remove the lower leaves, leaving a section of bare stem. Cuttings are often dipped into a special chemical called a rooting hormone to get more roots to form. The bottom end of the cutting is dipped into the hormone and then stuck into a special propagation media. When new cuttings or plugs arrive at the greenhouse, it's very important that they be inspected immediately for insects and diseases, and that any problems you see be reported to your supervisor. This will greatly help prevent future problems. These young plants and cuttings are very fragile and should be handled as gently as eggs. Roots can be easily damaged, which can lead to poor growth. Watering is also very important. Too much or too little water can cause plant stress as well as an insect or disease problem. Greenhouse plants are not grown in soil. These plants are grown in a special soilless mix or other type of growing media. This special growing media is needed to provide just the right amount of air and water to help plants grow their best. This media should always be thoroughly moistened before use. This will help hold cuttings in place as well as increase humidity around the leaves. There are several different types of growing media to choose from. These media often consist of combinations of peat moss, bark, compost, perlite, vermiculite, sand, and other similar materials. Growing media can be mixed on-site or purchased pre-mixed. Potting is another important step in growing plants in a greenhouse. There are numerous sizes and shapes of containers used for greenhouse crops. The type of container used is based on the size of the plant or plants as well as the look of the finished product. For best results, the potting media should be moist but not wet. Cuttings, plugs, seedlings, and other plant materials all require careful handling during potting. Avoid damaging roots and stems by handling young plants by their leaves. Try not to handle the plants too much. Excessive hand packing during potting will squeeze out valuable airspace. Be sure to thoroughly water the plants following potting. New plants are usually potted by hand, but some may be done by machine. Regardless of the method used, cuttings, plugs, and other plant materials should be potted as soon as possible after arriving at the greenhouse. To begin the process, bags of potting media are dumped onto a table, bench, or into a mixer. Water is then added to moisten the media. Fungicides and fertilizers can also be added at this time. Next, place a layer of media in the bottom of the container. It's important that plants are not potted too deep or too shallow. Planting too deep may result in disease problems. Planting too shallow often causes root damage. The soil level of the finished product should be at the original soil level of the cutting, liner, or plug. Adjust the bottom layer by adding or removing media to find the right potting depth. Lastly, gently fill in and lightly press the growing media around the sides of the plant. When you've finished, the plant should be back at the original depth. The level of the soil should be slightly lower than the edge of the container. This provides a shallow reservoir for watering. Now that we've covered some greenhouse basics, let's review by answering some multiple choice questions. Always keep hose ends, breakers, and nozzles A. in your pocket, B. near the water source, C. off the ground, or D. none of the above. If you selected C. off the ground, then you answered correctly. When new cuttings or plugs arrive at the greenhouse, it's very important that they be blank immediately. A. sprayed, B. inspected, C. watered, D. potted. If you selected B. inspected, then you answered correctly. Avoid damaging roots and stems by handling young plants by their A. stems, B. roots, C. flowers, or D. leaves. If you selected D. leaves, then you answered correctly. The soil level of the finished product should be blank the original soil level of the cutting, liner, or plug. A. slightly above, B. the same as, C. slightly below, D. none of the above. If you selected B. the same as, then you answered correctly. This concludes the Greenhouse Basics Part 1 learning module.